Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Zaria and today I will be giving you guys some book recommendations. We're in May now and I know so many of you probably made a New Year's resolution to start reading and probably haven't really read any books. So I thought I'd give you guys some recommendations, or if maybe you're in a reading slump and you just want some really good books, some of my favorite books to read to get out of that reading slump, or you just want to get into reading and maybe you've just never really read before. I personally started reading only about a year ago, and yeah, now it's turned into like this whole hobby. So I'm gonna split it into a few different categories based on genre, and let's get into it. First, we're gonna start with romance. So for me, romance was the first genre that I really got into. I feel like, especially as like, you know, a girl. So that was really what I loved. So one of my favorite authors ever, I feel like a lot of people talk about her, of course, is Miss Emily Henry. Her books are just so well written. Her characters are amazing. The stories are always so cute. These are two of her most recent books. Funny story, this book literally came out a month ago. It's so good, 5-star read. I love this book. It's I guess like kind of like friends to lovers, fake dating. And then we have Happy Place, which is another really popular book by her. This is another 5-star read for me. This is kind of second chance romance. And all of her books are very much set in like East Coast summer vibes. Like it's so good. Next up is Abby Jimenez. She is very like similar, I feel like very similar writing style types of books as Emily Henry. This is her new book called Just for the Summer. Once again, really good book. This is like a 4.5 stars for me. This is like a kind of like fake dating kind of vibe as well. Her books are like very similar, like I said, to Emily Henry's, where like they're like normally set in like beach towny vibes. So a lot of her characters are, especially I feel like her like male characters, very much golden retriever kind of guys. They're not like those kind of romances where it's like the kind of like scary CEO or like, it's never that. It's always some like super chill, like golden retriever kind of guy. So if you're into that, I highly recommend reading these books. Next up, we're gonna get to just some of my other favorite romancy books. So we have Magnolia Parks. Now this is a book that I know this series. This is a series. So there is, I think there's 5 books. So it goes between like Magnolia Parks and also Daisy Hates, who is another character in this universe. So the books alternate between the two characters. I like this series. I've only actually read the first book. I have the first Daisy Hates book, but I haven't really read it. I don't love this series. I think it's really good for like a book slump though, because it's like Gossip Girl, but they're like British. So it's just so chaotic. It's this very back and forth, you know, will they, won't they relationship. It can get a little annoying, but I know people love this series to death. So I honestly think it's a good book to read. A lot of drama, like I was having a blast reading it honestly for the first like 2/3, and then I got really annoyed because like they were just going back and forth. But it's a really good book, honestly. So I recommend it. Next is Before I Let Go. This is one of my favorite books that I read recently. I read this maybe 2 months ago. It is a second chance romance about this couple that is divorced and then they get back together, and it's just a really good book. Like it has really good storytelling. It really like pulls at your like emotions, your heartstrings. It feels very real. That's what I love about like these types of romance stories. Are just I want them to feel realistic. I don't want them to feel like a book or like a movie. I want this to feel like real people. And I feel like this author, she has another book that I think recently came out. I can't remember the name, but I'll probably be getting it. Just really good. And this book is actually very similar. This is maybe my favorite book ever, I think. I read this last summer in June. This is called 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. This book is so good. It's very similar to Before I Let Go. Like that's why I read Before I Let Go, because I had read this and a lot of people had compared it to this book, so I was like, I have to read it. And it's very similar, second chance romance. both of the main characters are authors. It's just a, once again, really real and raw book. Definitely with both of these books I would also say like trigger warnings for certain aspects of the book. Honestly, for a few of these books I would definitely say always look up the trigger warnings, but this is like my favorite book like ever. Like I just connected to this book so much. It's just such a good book. Okay, and then the last romance book that we're going to be talking about is called You Again. So this is by Kate Goldbeck, and I read this book in the fall. Obviously the cover is very fall vibes. Loved this book. I was not expecting to love this book. Like I had never read anything from this author, but it's so good. It's basically like a, I would say like a friends to lovers kind of vibe. Like they're friends for like a long period of time. They're kind of very different. Like their personalities are very different, but they end up becoming friends from being in like a situation, and they become friends, and they're like very different, but they like are always there for each other, and like we get to see like their relationship grow from like over a span of I think like 10 years or something. Like it's quite a long time, and they come in and out of each other's lives, and it's just like I love books like that where it's just kind of like a slow burn, and this is very much one of those. And they're also New York, so it's like just like that like cozy like New York, like I just love it. It's such a good book. I recommend. We can move into like thriller and fantasy. First we can start off with Ace of Spades. This is a really good thriller. This is one of the first thrillers that I think I ever read. This is so interesting. It's about these two black students that go to this very like rich private school. It's very much like they're like targeted, and I remember being so paranoid while reading this book. Like I was like looking over my shoulder. This book made me like I couldn't trust anybody in this book. It very much feels like kind of like Pretty Little Liars kind of vibe. You just don't know who to trust. You don't know what's real, what's not. It's really good. Next up is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. So this is a 3-part series, I believe. This is about a girl who decides to basically like open up this case and solve this case that occurred in her like town that she doesn't really feel like, she feels like something's off, like something didn't happen correctly. The investigation was wrong, so she takes it upon herself to reopen this case and investigate it. She's like 17, but she does it for like a project, and I just love this series in general because it's just so interesting because we get to see like interviews. There are like interview portions. There are like, she does like person of interest lists. There's like maps, and there's like recordings, and there's like, it's like, it just feels very like interactive while you're reading it because she's like figuring out this case and stuff, and it's really cool. Like I said, 3-part series. All of the books are really good, and I love her. I love this book. Next we have Across the Lake by Riley Sager. Now I honestly like Riley Sager a lot. Like I know some people don't love his books just because they can be a little chaotic sometimes. Like I definitely agree. Like sometimes the twists and turns in some of these books are a little out there. Like this book, I will definitely say like there's some twists in here that I'm like, oh, that was interesting. But I actually love this book. Like it's so good. It had me hooked. It had me hooked like straight away. It's basically about a woman who goes to stay in her lake house, and she is basically able to like look over the lake into her like across the lake like neighbors, and she like spies on them, and there's like a lot of like weird things happening over there, and she's kind of trying to figure out what's going on. And there's like this back and forth between like the current day and then like the past, and it's really good. I love it. And then the last like thriller mystery we have is The Naturals. This is my favorite series. This is very reminiscent of Criminal Minds. If you're a huge Criminal Minds fan like me, you will love this book. I kid you not, you will love this book. It's about these teenagers who are part of this group in the FBI where they like help with cases, and they all have like, they're called The Naturals because they have like natural, almost like powers, and like our main character, she is like a natural profiler, just like so like good at being able to look at someone and immediately know your entire life story. A bunch of the other like kids in the group all have like their own different little like natural powers, and they work with the FBI, and oh my gosh, it's so good. Like the third book is like my favorite book. It's so good. There are 4 books and then there's a novella, so there's 5 books. It's so good. It's literally so good. Like this is, you have to read this book. You truly have to read this book. I love it. How many times am I gonna say I recommend this or I love it? Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, it's the truth. I love these books and I want you all to read them. Okay, let's move on to some fantasy books. First book is Belladonna by Adeline Grace. I read this book pretty recently, back in March. This book actually sent me into a reading slump. I think I mentioned that in my last video. This sent me into a reading slump because it was so good, but it's really good. I was never really into fantasy. That's why I don't have like a huge stack. I'm not really into fantasy all that much, but I'm getting into it. I'm not really into like high fantasy. I like more of like romantasy, where like it's like a fantasy world, but it's more like focused on the romance aspect, or like there's a mystery. And I feel like this book kind of has that. It has like the mystery, it has the romance. It's like very like a little magical elements, but it's really really well written book. I love how I don't even know how to describe it. Like the writing sometimes feels very like flowery and like, I don't know, I love it. I also just love the cover of this book. Yeah, I highly recommend this. I don't even know if I explained the book. I mean, just read the back, like it's cute. I love this book. I explained that book in like my last video, so go watch that video if you want to know more about that book, or just buy the book and read it. I have these 2 books. Now these are, I would consider them to be like fantasy, like they're what are they called? Not historical fiction, they're Greek mythology. Greek mythology, which I think most people would consider to be fantasy. So I have them in the fantasy thing. But this is Circe and Song of Achilles. I feel like everybody knows Song of Achilles. It's about the is he a Greek god or demigod? I can't remember the actual technicality of it, but like the god Achilles, and this one is about Circe. These books are pretty good. I just think the writing of these books, they're very well written. They're definitely like not like easy reads, I would say, like just because of I guess like the way the characters speak, and like the names are really like, I couldn't even tell you what half the names are in these books, because it's just like, because they're like mythological, it's just like the names are like so difficult to pronounce, and the places and stuff. They're good books. Like I really recommend reading them. Also just because like, I mean, I know these are obviously like mythological stories, but also told in different ways, because I know some people, that's what they critique about these books, is that they're not accurate to what like the real mythological stories are. But like, I think it's still interesting as someone who like does not know anything about like mythological things to like read about like Greek mythology and stuff. So I would recommend it. A lot of people love Song of Achilles, makes them cry. It did make me cry, but I did really like it. Talk about one last fantasy book. This is Caraval. This honestly is maybe my favorite fantasy book next to Belladonna. This is by Stephanie Garber. I love Stephanie Garber. I actually really want to read her. I think it's called Once Upon a Broken Heart. I don't know if it's a series or just a standalone book, but Caraval, this series is so good. So this book is about these 2 sisters that are invited to this Caraval basically like game where you have to follow these clues and then you get a prize at the end. And when I tell you the way this book is written, I've never read anything like it. It's just, oh my god, it's so gorgeous the way it's written, and like the way you can visualize everything. Like the author would like describe things of like it was the color of stardust and like things like that, and it's just such like gorgeous writing, and like the covers are gorgeous, and like you just get so like enthralled in like the mystery and the story and like the game, and like you're like trying to like figure out like what's going on, and like it's so good. I have all 3 books. So good. I think there's like a 4th one coming out, or maybe like a novella or something. I'm so excited. We're down to our literary fiction and memoirs, and then I also have 1 self-help book. Our literary fiction, we have Taylor Jenkins Reid. I think her books are considered literary fiction. I was trying to figure this out, but I think they are. They're like historical literary fiction-ish books, like where it's very much like the story is powered by the characters and their development and stuff. Carrie Soto is back, and Malibu Rising are my personal 2 favorite books. I do love Daisy Jones and the Six and The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Those books are incredible, but these 2 just speak to me. Carrie Soto is back. If you've watched the Challengers movie, you'll probably like this. Like, I actually haven't watched Challengers yet. I probably will. But it's tennis, and that's like, this is literally how I know anything about tennis. I didn't know a thing about tennis, still don't. But this book is about a tennis player who retires and she comes back. And it's basically her, like, it's a lot of character development. This book almost made me cry, to be honest. But it's a lot of character development, and yeah, she comes back from being retired and having like, I think like an injury or something. It's really a story about like resilience and like trying, and I guess especially with like athletes, where it's like you doing your sport is not your personality, it's not who you are, it's not your only, like, it's not the only reason why you're valuable. Like, you are who you are, and it's not just the sport that you play. And Malibu Rising, this is a book about like a family. I think this is 3rd person. I was trying to figure out if there was different point of views, but this is about a family that lives in Malibu, and they're like a surfer family, and it's basically about this like giant house party they have, and each chapter is like a timestamp from nighttime to the next morning, and a lot of the crazy things that happen to this family throughout this one night, which I love books like that, where it's just like one day is the entire book. And this is very much that, where it's just like the entire night. And there's like this kind of overarching theme that it starts in the book and like goes to the end of the book. It's so well written as well. And yeah, like Taylor Jenkins Reid, she just, I don't know how she does it. She's just like by far, I think, one of the best writers like right now. Like it's just so good. The last literary fiction book we have is Tomorrow, Tomorrow, Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, and I feel like a lot of people know a lot about this book and have heard this book. I really like this book. I originally tried reading the physical copy of it, but I really couldn't get into it, so then I read the audiobook, and the audiobook, I recommend that more than the physical book. I definitely think some literary fiction books can be a little difficult to read just because they tend to be in 3rd person, and I don't know, just sometimes the way they're written, it's just difficult. It's difficult to like read. It's easier to like listen to it. So I highly recommend this, and this is just a book about these 2 characters. They're like game designers. I think it's back in like the 80s or 90s kind of vibe. And it's basically just like their time together over a span of like quite a few years of them creating this game, and their relationship, and it's a lot. But I recommend the audiobook. It's definitely way easier to digest. Okay, we're almost done, I promise. First memoir that I absolutely love is Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. I feel like everyone talks about this book. I feel like this is such a good book if you are like a younger girl like me. I'm 20 years old. Like if you're like very much that age range, I think this is a really good book. It's about obviously Dolly and like her life, and these different, like each chapter it's kind of just like a different point in her life, different stories that she tells. There's recipes in here, and we really just see how she has grown and changed from, like, I think in the beginning of the book she starts off being like a child and stuff, and then towards the end she's like in her 30s. So it's a really interesting book. I think you can definitely learn a lot from this book. I also read this with the audiobook as well. So the next one is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I just recently read this book like last week, and it's so good. Like literally 5-star book. Of course, about Jeanette McCurdy, and yeah, just like her life, how like behind the scenes, like the different things that were happening to her, and like her relationship with her mother, of course, and just the toxic reality of like how her life was, and how she now has later like dealt with that and like gone to therapy and like grown. Especially towards the end we see kind of like more of her like progressing and getting better, and it's just really a good book, like just learning about what we didn't know. Really insightful, so I really recommend. And then the last book is just a self-help book, and Atomic Habits. Look, I feel like a lot of people talk about this book. This is one of the first books I actually read like almost 2 years ago, when I was trying to get into reading, but I didn't really get into reading because I was trying to read self-help books, and it's like it's not gonna really get me into reading. But I just recommend this book if you just literally want a self-help book. Maybe you want to learn how to have like better habits. Like this book is really good. It just like teaches you a lot about like literally what it says, tiny changes, remarkable results. Just teaches you how to get into like habits and keep them, and how setting too big of goals is not going to help you reach your actual goals. Like if they're too big and not actually like accessible for you to reach. And yeah, I feel like this is a really good book to like annotate and like actually like write down the different like things that he talks about. And yeah, I just recommend it. I love this book. I actually took a lot of this into consideration like moving forward with my life. So yeah, and those are all of my recommendations, guys. I hope you liked this video. I hope I didn't talk too much. I probably did. I've been filming for like 30 minutes. That's all for today's video, guys. I really hope you guys enjoyed. Comment down below like any other video ideas that you want me to do. Also make sure you subscribe, you follow me on all my socials. I'll have them linked down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.